Hello and welcome to Sunset TV. You're watching Discussion today with me, Rajat Kain. In this episode, we'll discuss atrocities and crime against women and children. Well, the Parliamentary panel has found that there was a spurt in cases of domestic violence and also trafficking of children during the lockdown and has recommended continued cash transfer and moratorium on loan repayment, among other steps to empower women. Now, these are the steps of the policy, where at the same time, the panel also discussed about the penal provisions and how certain things or action can be paced up so that things can act as deterrent when it comes to crime against women and children. To discuss further on this issue, we're joined with Dr. Yatan Singh Balhara. He's from Department of Psychiatry, All India Institute of Medical Sciences. Many thanks, Dr. Balhara, for joining us. And Rekha Aggarwal, she is advocate of Supreme Court. Ma'am, many thanks for joining us. Let me start with you, Advocate Aggarwal. Ma'am, there were a lot of reports of violence against women and children, primarily during the lockdown, since we're discussing about the Parliamentary panel report. So, if you gone through those newspaper reports or press reports, what were the reasons that you found that there was a spurt in cases?
I think the biggest reason for the increase in cases of violence against women and children could be the fact that during the COVID times and post-COVID, the time spent by most of the people was inside. So when people are packed together in a particular environment, in closed doors, and they're not able to step out, whether it is for work or for education or for any activity, even for a social gathering. So though of course this may be more a reason that that the doctor would be able to, the panel would be able to speak better about.
Absolutely.
But
right.
I think that the psychological factors have played a great role in this, in the increase of violence. And since people were staying inside the house, they faced a lot of challenges. As I just said, that they were not able to get out of the house. So women, become a very easy target in such kind of situations. They become more like a punching bag, or rather a doormat where the man can just, wipe his feet and just walk away. Women have always been at the receiving end, in cases of domestic violence. Whether they are married, whether they're unmarried, though the cases of violence increase more whether women are married. And the husbands, they tend to take them for granted. So when the situation has been bleak, where the dignity of women is concerned, where the enforcement of rights have been concerned, even before COVID era, post-COVID, I can, and as a lawyer, I can certainly say that the number of women who've been coming to me with complaints regarding the domestic violence issues that they have increased, during the COVID period. And the reason that they've always given is that, that the husbands are in the house, the children are in the house, the in-laws are over there. And, the economic issues that the bread earner of the family is facing, when he has a target, when he has to look after his family, and he's not able to achieve that target. So he has to find a vent to his emotions. And the easiest way out is to take out the violence on women. So, and as I just said, that women have always been at the receiving end. You tend to take them for granted. You do not realize the fact that besides being, somebody's wife, somebody's, mother, or somebody's daughter-in-law, she is a human being in her own right. She also needs to be treated with equality, treated with dignity. And that is not something that she's asking for the moon. In fact, that is what the Constitution itself guarantees, that there should be no difference between men and women, and they should be treated equally. But of course, this is a utopian targets that I think that we try to achieve. And domestic violence cases have certainly increased. The financial issues have been a very big reason. The verbal violence, when you just say anything at all that comes to your mind, you accuse the woman of, not looking after the house properly. You raise your hand on her in anger. It is basically the frustration which is coming out during this period. And
right.
When the children are in the house all the time. So I think it has just kind of led to the women's, situation becoming bleaker than before.
Right, ma'am. Right. Many thanks for your opening remarks, Advocate Rekha Aggarwal. I'll come back to you. Dr. Balhara, here, as ma'am said, there are certain psychiatric issues when it comes to lockdown. Since we're discussing primarily the lockdown period and vis-a-vis that spurt of increase in crime against women and children. So let's start with that. This for the first time we had, like all of us had seen lockdown for the first time. We'd never experienced this phenomenon before. How does these change of living styles or lifestyle for that matter, changes human behavioral aspects?
See, that's a very important aspect that you have brought forward. What we need to realize is that during COVID-19 pandemic, probably beginning April or sometime around that,
March, yeah.
our life changed. Everybody was living a life in a very different way, in a way that they have never lived. What it meant was there was this stress of the situation. We were all facing a pandemic. We had very little clue or idea what this is, what we are faced with. There was no treatment in sight. People had started talking about vaccine and possible cure coming up, but that was a far-fetched idea at that point in time. Then there were issues like job uncertainty, financial issues, and on top of it, the usual sources through which people would kind of take care of their impulses, their frustrations, they were also challenged. And by that, what I mean is that usual support systems no longer functional. For example, you are not meeting your friends the way you used to. You are not going out of the household, doing physical activity or anything that would relax you. So what it meant was there were lots of reasons that were pushing you towards getting frustrated, getting angry, and then the avenues to express it in a healthy way or in a non-threatening way or a non-disruptive way, they had gone away. So eventually what happened was people were looking for, I would say that easy way out in order to handle their own frustrations and their own anger. And we have known that in most of the cultures, most of the societies around us, traditionally, gender-based violence, intimate partner violence, women have been on the receiving end of that, and that kind of escalated. Additionally, what we need to keep in mind is that besides this intimate partner violence that was happening within the households, there was another dimension of crimes against women that has increased in COVID-19 times, and that is the online crimes against women. Things like sexual harassment, cyber stalking. Those crimes have also increased, and that has to do with increased presence online. We all were accessing online platforms way more than earlier. It was more of necessity rather than a choice, I would say. But then, since we were not very well prepared, that also fueled the situation to a large extent.
Right, that's important to understand. Right, many thanks, Dr. Balhara. Ma'am, Ms. Aggarwal, like, if we broad base this discussion of crime against women per se, like, what are the crime heads that you have seen as a lawyer in which, like, women have been recipient of these atrocities? I mean, yes, domestic violence is one, as you mentioned. Besides that, if we talk of the street crime, like chain snatching, eve teasing, or for that matter, I mean, any harassment, what increase have you seen in last 1 year, if we talk about that?
The cases that have come to be, besides the cases of domestic violence, the usual kind of domestic violence that we imagine, that is verbal violence, physical violence, emotional torture, financial insecurities that you face in the house because of, lack of income. All those problems, of course, have always been there where the women have been facing before COVID and even after COVID. But as far as other kind of crimes are concerned outside the house, in the public, there have been, as Dr. Balhara also pointed out, that there have been a lot of crimes, the cyber crimes, because people have been hooked onto their mobile phones, to their iPads and to the internet. So the kind of sexual crimes which have increased over there, in terms of stalking, in terms of in terms of voyeurism, the social networking that should have been used in a positive manner, instead of being used in a positive manner to communicate with each other, and to keep the social, society going. Instead of that, I have seen that, people have come to me and said that, oh, ma'am, this person is always stalking me on the, on my Facebook account. There have been cases of impersonation, and there have been cases of cyberbullying. And a lot of cases of cyberbullying have been there. And where even children, not only have women been subjected to, and children have been subjected to violence, by the traditional offenders, that is the men. But at the same time, even some children, have gone the wrong path. where they have not been able to get the proper guidance, from their family or from their teachers, and from whatever little knowledge that they have gained, on the internet, they've started misusing it. So cyber violence has been there in terms
Right.
of bullying, in terms of stalking, in terms of defamation, hate mail, etc. And while on the street, I think because of the financial insecurities that will be there, there have been many cases, where there have been chain snatching. There have been cases where people have come and informed that my purse was just pulled away. I went to the market, to just buy some vegetables, and and there have also been cases, increase in cases of sexual violence in the public. That where men have not kind of stopped themselves from kind of what they call the traditional eve teasing, or and any kind of a sexual physical violence, probably that kind of since they were not able to find out a proper vent to their physical needs, or to the physical emotions and to their mental emotions, they have very easily found a target in women. Women have always been an easy prey. And at the same time, while we're talking about women being the traditional targets of domestic violence or any other kind of sexual violence, let us not forget children. That even children have been a victim of such kind of violence at home, where sometimes their parents have taken out their frustrations on them, by hitting them, or by abusing them, always, kind of harassing them or nagging them. It is because their own securities are coming out in this manner. And even cases of sexual violence, unfortunate rise in cases of POXO, the most, I think, unpardonable crime that can ever happen in our society, in a civilized society, is crime against children.
Right.
And POXO is the only law in a country which is gender neutral. So there have been cases of violence not only against women, that is,
Right.
older women and younger women, but even against young boys. Those kind of cases have also been there, which is, of course, a very sad situation that the world is seeing right now.
That's really important dimension, ma'am. You've added of cyber crime against women and children, and that to like even against like even young boys. Like Dr. Balhara, here I need to understand one thing. It's, of course, for the benefit of viewers, like why there has been increase in cyber bullying or cyber crime or cyber intimidation of any, the vulnerable group here happens to be women students, or say perhaps like a colleague. Is it like, I mean, there is a lack of tolerance, or is it like I mean, people in general, when it comes to cyber interaction, they don't know where to draw the line?
I would say that there are multiple factors that are at play. First, of course, is that our online presence had increased. But that should not mean that crime should also increase, because we don't go online to face these situations. But yes, our presence had increased. So the opportunities for those who were perpetrators, for them to commit these crimes, they increase. And internet and online platforms, they have very unique characteristics which these individuals who engage in these crimes, they find that they work for them. For example, there is ease of access. You can reach a much wider potential target group rather than face-to-face or physical world crimes. Then there is anonymity to a large extent that you can maintain. You need not reveal your identity, and still you can engage in the crime. And then one tends to have this feeling that since you are not face-to-face, you might get away doing it, because on the other end, people who are receiving it, they are also not prepared to do anything in a situation where they are victims of such a crime. And there comes in the role that those who are the potential victims, they are probably not even prepared. And by that, what I mean is that when we go online, when we access an online platform, we have very minimal knowledge. We access a website or an app, and we are there doing our business, whatever purpose we have, but we don't know what all goes behind that. The digital footprints that we are leaving behind, issues of security that we at times fail to pay attention to, and that gives opportunities to these individuals who are engaging in these crimes. Also, what we need to remember is that when it comes to the online platforms, the dynamics change quite a bit.
Okay.
If I take example of cyberbullying, if you compare it with the bullying in the physical world, usually what you expect is that the victim is physically weaker, maybe less strongly built, psychologically likely to get intimidated very easily. But when you talk about cyberbullying, these physical attributes need not be there. And in
Right.
fact, you can find a perpetrator who might not be physically intimidating, but yes, because of the presence and connections with the people in the group around the victim, even those individuals are engaging in these behaviors. So there is individual psychological factors, and then there is this group behavior that comes into play whenever human beings engage in a behavior. And it's a combination of all these factors that is probably behind an increase in these observations.
Right. Ma'am Aggarwal, in terms of our legal provisions when it comes to counter cyber crime, especially, there is a factor of anonymity. Are there provisions in place, or is our cyber law, has enough teeth so as to counter this menace, or people are still taking advantage of anonymity when it comes to cyberspace?
I think definitely we do have a very advanced cyber cell in our, which is a part of the Delhi police. We have a specialized cyber cell which is dedicated to investigation of cyber crimes totally. And they have got very advanced, sophisticated training. But this is a world, the cyber world is a world which is a seamless world. There is no limit to this world. And the question of anonymity, which Dr. Balhara also talked about, the accused person, or rather the criminal, the perpetrator of the crime, always takes advantage of the fact that he or she thinks that he is anonymous, and that he's not going to be caught. But always, as that old saying goes, the chor ki dadi mein tinka. So the criminal always leaves behind some footprints,
Right.
and you always leave behind some footprints in the virtual world. So, of course, cyber crime, is not impossible, to investigate and to reach an end. But yes, there's a big role which the cyber specialists have to play in it. And our country, I think, the cyber department, which is of the Delhi police, which is investigating into these matters, I would rather congratulate them. And I think that they do need to hone up their skills, time and again. And I'm quite certain that the Ministry of Home Affairs would be looking into the matter. But yes, Cyber Cell has definitely seen a big surge. And it is also, what I'm seeing that a lot of extramarital affairs are now, are now coming to the fore because of the misuse of the cyber facilities which are available to certain people. People are indulging in, those kind of activities which they have been more, cautious about indulging in before. I, as a lawyer, I'm doing personally, I have first-hand knowledge of marriages which are breaking apart because the spouse is, indulging in those kind of activities which he or she may not have indulged before.
Right.
Now you have all the time at your disposal. And they say that, an empty mind is a devil's workshop. So while sitting at home, all that you need is a smartphone in your hand to indulge in such kind of activities. And a couple of times I've had, dialogues with the specialists who are manning the cyber cell, and they have actually told me that, ma'am, we are at a wit's end as to the number of cases which are coming. We have women even complaining about their husbands, indulging into affairs or into such kind of unwanted pornographic activities which are not encouraged by their wives, So
Right.
those things have increased. And I think that people have to be cautious. And, the education of the limit has to come within your own self. You have to be your own guardian. You have to keep checks and balances within your own system. That monitoring, nobody can do but your own self.
So, Dr. Balhara, here, in terms of understanding the human behavior, how important does it get, facilities like counseling, be it for husband and wife in these cases, as ma'am just pointed out about use of smartphone and delving into the internet space for certain things that obviously is not acceptable between the two spouses. At the same time, the institutional mechanism of giving some sort of a advice to people in general, so that they should not indulge in activities like crime against women or petty crime for that matter, because that amounts a lot.
See, I would say that at the moment in our country, this aspect related to crimes against women and probably children and adolescents as well, we we very seldom talk about the mental health implications, especially in context of the cyber crimes. Even if we are able to find the person who committed the crime, and if we are able to punish that person, the victim has already suffered. He or she has gone through the trauma. And when it comes to cyber crimes, the trauma is manifold as compared to any other crime that happens in the physical world, because a larger fraction of population comes to know of it. The information spreads around a lot. Even if you have approached the police and you have tried to restrain people from circulating those information and those pieces of information, it takes time. And that's the crucial period where all these adverse mental health effects happen. On top of it, since most of us are not very well educated on this theme, even if we are victim, we try to blame ourselves, and we try to think that what is it that I did wrong that made me become a victim, rather than looking on the perpetrator and asking questions from that person, that why would he or she engage in such a crime. So that's one part of it. Second is that counseling can play a very crucial role, because when you are facing such situations, you need to have the right kind of education, that what is it that you should know about these issues. Second, you need to understand what is it within you that is probably either pushing you towards it, or I'm talking about people who are committing these crimes, so that if you're trying to help them, that why are they engaging in these behaviors? What are the issues that need to be addressed? And we also need to remember that at least a sizable fraction of these people who are committing these crimes, there might be an underlying psychological issue that they are facing.
Okay.
And since it's addressed in the right way, it's manifesting itself in form of these crimes being committed. So both the victims as well as people who are perpetrating these crimes, they need to be approached from this perspective. We need to explore the reasons, the psychological factors that are at play, and we need to offer them right kind of counseling, so that at least the crime doesn't get repeated. Because cyber crime, the tendency of people who commit it, as well as of being victims, being a victim second time and being a perpetrator second time, at least we can bring in that preventive component, where even if you have been once, we can help you so that you don't go through the same trauma or same adverse consequences again and again in your life.
Right. Rekha Aggarwal, ma'am, before we come to the close of the show, just one question that we need to understand. As a society, like we have seen crime against women, against children, now, these concepts of counseling and imparting some education, has it yielded, how much of a positive result has it yielded when it comes to especially, say, bullying within the school? Like, even that, say, that is, of course, a psychological crime that we have seen, and there have been cases of heinous crime when bullying increases a certain threshold. And, of course, like, differences or violence, or for that matter, issues at home. So how much counseling has helped in resolving these matters, and of course, like for better?
I think definitely counseling can play a very positive role. And if these are all rather, I would say, preventive measures, before the crime has occurred. So I think, as I say, good education first begins at home. Counseling and good education needs to be imparted to the children first, primarily in their own home. And thereafter, the teachers, when we're talking of children, if you're talking about schools, as Dr. Balhara pointed out, children need to be counseled and given the right direction in school itself to stop not only physical bullying, but cyber bullying also, which has, as we have been discussing in this show, that cyber bullying has increased during the COVID era because of the easy access to mobiles and internet.
Right.
So I think counseling and at the same time, good education regarding having good value system. And if, as a lawyer, I would also like to add over here that, unfortunately, and I do use the word unfortunately, people have a very low, low respect and low knowledge of law, of the legal system, and people do not respect the Indian legal system generally, and they think that we can just get away with murder because our legal system is very slow and that we are not ever going to get caught. But people must remember that in the Indian legal system is such a strong legal system where crimes against women and children are concerned that, as I say, life comes around a full circle. Justice delayed, but not denied, definitely. And under the Indian Evidence Act, any kind of cyber crime is definitely recognized and treated as a cognizable offense.
Right.
Under the Information Technology Act, under the Indian Evidence Act, coupled together, we are seeing a lot of cases of misuse of WhatsApp facility, which is there because WhatsApp calls cannot be recorded. And the mass messages which now get circulated under WhatsApp, the mass hate campaigns, the mass defamation campaigns which get started on WhatsApp. So I think all these things can be curbed if proper counseling is there as a preventive measure. And even post the crime having taken place, children and whoever the perpetrator of the crime is, he should have the knowledge of the law that, look, this is what is going to be the ultimate result if any criminal activity is done by me. Law is going to come around a full circle. The law is going to catch up with you, and you cannot get away with it as easily as you think. Unfortunately, people think that any kind of cyber crime gets wiped away or washed away. But no, it does leave its footprints in time, and you are going to pay for your crimes one day or the other. That is something that people should remember, and they should learn to respect law. For that, knowledge and awareness of law is required.
Right. That's very important. Thanks, ma'am, for joining us and elucidating on the extremely important issue. And thanks, Dr. Balhara, for explaining us as to how things have changed. And of course, like in the lockdown, how it has affected psyche of a lot of people. Well, that's it in this edition of Discussion today. Thanks for watching Sunset TV. Goodbye.